I am an emergency room nurse, and this is my 7th year working at the hospital.
Finally, it's almost time to get off work. John today felt busy in the first half of the night, but the second half was quite relaxed.
To be honest, when she said that, I felt a shiver down my spine.
Please, for the love of everything, don't jinx it. Only say things like that after we've left the hospital.
Those in the nursing profession know the unspoken rule: never say you're relaxed or calm before your shift ends, don't eat dragon fruit, and don't drink certain brands of milk. It's not superstition, but it might as well be. Sure enough, at 1:30 a.m., a well-dressed man burst into the emergency room with a fruit knife.
Doctor, help me, I need my stomach pumped.
I immediately pressed the alarm button to notify the security department while trying to calm him down. When he turned to look at me, his eyes were bloodshot, and I knew trouble was coming. He lunged at me with the knife, aiming for my heart. He was too fast for me to react.
This is it, I thought.
But when I opened my eyes again, I instinctively kicked him to the side and punched him. At the same time, a mechanical female voice echoed in my mind.
Congratulations, host, you have acquired the skills of a martial arts champion.
Yes, I have a special ability. Whenever I encounter unreasonable medical disputes, I gain a new skill. I discovered this ability the year before last. That year, I was caring for a pregnant woman with underlying health issues who barely survived childbirth. I had just started my job and took great care of her. Under my care, her once pale and dying face regained color. But her husband was unhappy. He was upset because I took such good care of his wife. He came at me with a knife, intending to disable my hand. I instinctively pushed him, and he fell to the ground. Then, I was hit with a complaint. Despite pleading my case to my superiors multiple times.
Jack, there's no evidence.
Yes, he had arranged to meet me in a blind spot of the surveillance cameras. It was hard to argue. I was suspended and spent my days at home, drowning myself in alcohol, unable to understand what I had done wrong. One night, as I was being taken to the hospital for a stomach pump, I saw a glimmer of light through my haze, followed by a mechanical female voice in my ear.
System 006 binding to host. Congratulations to the host for acquiring an indestructible body. Good luck, +10.
Soon, I received a notice to return to work at the hospital. I later learned that the man was upset about his wife's quick recovery because he had taken out a large insurance policy on her and had already prepared to transfer all her assets to himself with the help of a lawyer. Unfortunately for him, she recovered. I heard that the woman later divorced him, and he didn't get a penny. I accidentally saved a woman's life, and it felt great. By the time the security guards arrived, I had already restrained the man on a bed using safety straps. He kept shouting,
"I need my stomach pumped! Pump my stomach!"
Why do you need that?
He looked at me angrily and turned his head away.
Have I offended you before?
I had never seen him before in my life. I hoped Emma could help, assuming her gentle demeanor would earn his trust. But as she approached, the man struggled more violently, scaring her back to the nurse's station.
Michael, can you come to the emergency room? We have a patient demanding a stomach pump with a knife. I suspect he may have a mental issue, but neither Emma nor I can communicate with him.
On my way.
Michael, wearing his white coat, looked quite dashing, with his glasses and composed demeanor. Emma, who had been scared moments earlier, now appeared calm and even smiled.
Hello, I am the doctor on duty. May I know your name?
The man paused his struggle, looking at Michael, then burst into tears.
"Doctor, you have to save me."
Don't worry, saving lives is our duty. Tell me what happened so I can treat you properly.
John, is Dr. Michael married? Does he have a girlfriend?
Young people love gossip. I didn't answer her question.
"My name is David. I am 42 years old. I own a small company and am considered successful. But my son and our maid tried to harm me. They poisoned my dinner tonight.
Michael nodded for him to continue.
At 1 o'clock, I suddenly felt a stomachache and realized, despite all my precautions, I had been poisoned.
Then why did you bring a knife?
Get away, you ungrateful son! You tried to harm your own father for a maid.
So, I was the ungrateful son? No wonder he wanted to harm me. And Emma was the maid.
As a son, you must be filial and respect the elderly.
He turned back to David.
You see, I have already educated him. Please continue.
I brought the knife in case they found out I was seeking help and tried to stop me. It was for self-defense, and it came in handy. Doctor, please pump my stomach quickly. If you don't, I won't make it.
Do you know what kind of poison they used? We need to choose the right neutralizer for the stomach pump. If we use the wrong one, it could be fatal.
Rat poison, it must be rat poison.
Michael stopped taking notes and looked at me, puzzled.
Rat poison?
It's a local term for a specific poison. Its main component is tetramine.
He rolled his eyes at me and continued questioning the patient.
How did you find out?
One night, I saw my useless son hugging that maid. I was worried she would charm him and kill me to inherit my wealth. So I was extra cautious. As a businessman, caution is paramount.
This story was getting interesting.
After understanding the situation, Michael ordered blood tests, induced vomiting, and requested a psychiatric consultation.
The blood test scene was chaotic, with 4 or 5 security guards needed to hold him down. Fortunately, the results showed he wasn't poisoned, except for high blood fat. The psychiatrist recommended David for inpatient treatment. Half an hour later, his son arrived with a beautiful woman. David's son, who had been partying while his father was in the hospital, later thanked me for taking care of his father and asked me not to take his father's words to heart. About half a year later, another patient with mental symptoms caused a scene in the emergency room. The consulting doctor was the same as before. I chatted with her while Michael wrote orders.
Did the patient who demanded a stomach pump recover completely?
He improved and was discharged, but later had another episode at home. He believed his son and someone else were trying to poison him and fell from his villa's 3rd floor. He didn't survive.
Michael adjusted his glasses and spoke to me.
Orders are ready. He then turned to the consulting doctor. Do you think it's possible he didn't have a mental illness or a relapse? That someone really tried to poison him the first time, but he unknowingly avoided it and thought he hadn't?
You've been reading too many novels.
I knew Michael wouldn't say something without reason. I remembered David's son, who had politely told me not to take his father's words to heart. I felt a chill down my spine. At 5:30 a.m., an ambulance brought in a cleaner with a severed arm, covered in blood.
Another tough case.
Let's start examining his injuries.
The patient had been receiving CPR since the accident. Even if he were saved, his life would be drastically altered.
Have you contacted the family?
I just reached his daughter, a graduate student at the medical school in University Town.
Draw a set of pre-transfusion tests, match the blood, and transfuse 800 cubic centimeters of whole blood. 2 people per group, take turns continuing CPR. Also, contact the trauma center for reattaching the severed arm.
The patient's injuries were far worse than we had imagined. Internal bleeding, a completely severed cervical spine, fractured ribs, a severed right arm.
It seems hopeless.
The ambulance colleague shared the man's story.
His name is Robert. He wasn't supposed to work today, but took over another shift for a $200 daily allowance. He worked hard to support his daughter's education.
At 6:45, the injured man's daughter arrived.
Dad.
She didn't cry but stared blankly at her father.
I won't proactively explain the condition to her. She can see the severity herself.
Robert sensed his daughter's presence and weakly moved his left pinky.
Live.
After saying that, he fell silent, the monitor indicating a flatline.
Prepare for CPR.
No, I know. I give up on resuscitation. I don't want to torment him anymore.
At 7:03, he pronounced clinical death.
Dad, you've had a hard life. For me, you endured all kinds of hardships. In the next life, let's be father and daughter again, and I'll take care of you, okay?
Emma and I felt a chill watching from the side. At 7:56, the girl calmed down and began handling Robert's discharge procedures.
My examination showed that your father's cervical spine and connective tissues were completely severed, only the epithelial tissue holding it together. Do you know what that means?
The girl suddenly burst into tears.
I understand. I will live well. I promise.
After a busy night, it was finally time to go home.
What were you talking about at the department door this morning that made the girl cry again?
Do you know why that sanitation worker didn't pass away on the spot?
Stop. I'm a firm materialist.
He was holding on. Medically speaking, with his neck completely severed, only the skin holding it together, he shouldn't have been able to speak. A complete severance at C3 means there's no chance of survival.
No need to go into such detail.
That's why, when his daughter knew he was holding on just to tell her to live, she cried at the door.
Michael, please spare me. Only when talking about these topics do you speak so eloquently.
You don't understand. It's better to believe it exists than not.
I couldn't shake the eerie feeling around me. Another day of disliking Michael. The emergency room and the observation room, though both part of the emergency department, are two separate working areas. On July 12, 2019, I was on the evening shift from 18 to 2 o'clock, just past my 3-year novice period. At that time, Michael was still in our department for training, a bit of a greenhorn. At 21:15, an ambulance brought in a 97-year-old man who had a sudden heart issue while watching an anti-Japanese war drama at home. On the way back, he had been stabilized, and by the time he arrived, his complexion was normal, and his breathing was steady. Michael was gathering information about the patient's condition while another colleague and I were conducting further examinations and treatment. The family member who came with the ambulance was his youngest daughter, 65 years old, with graying hair and a trembling voice.
Since my husband passed away, my father has been living with me. He loves watching war dramas, especially Bright Sword, which he has watched more than 10 times. Although I knew he had heart disease, I never stopped him because nothing had happened before. Who knew his emotions would run so high this time? I didn't know what to do, but luckily you arrived in time.
I looked at her slightly red eyes and trembling hands, feeling a bit emotional. The bond between parents and children always touches the heart deeply.
Does he take his medication regularly?
Yes, he does.
I turned around, inserting in 4 needle while talking to the old man. Grandpa, it will hurt a bit when the needle goes in. Please bear with it.
It's nothing. This little pain is nothing.
While attaching the heart monitor, I noticed a large scar above his 11th rib, which seemed to be quite old. Michael noticed it too, and before he could ask, the family member explained.
My father is a veteran. He got that injury on the battlefield.
Everyone in the room felt a sense of respect. We had to give him VIP treatment within our capabilities. All subsequent examinations and treatments were expedited. In less than half an hour, Grandpa was transferred to the observation room. His condition was indeed stable. He was placed in bed 22 in the observation room. I secretly checked on him a few times, and he always looked expectantly at the door. Perhaps after a lifetime on the battlefield, he longed for freedom. After all, being in a semi-reclining position is not something everyone can tolerate for long. You never know whether an accident or a surprise will come first. The next day, during a break, Michael and I were discussing the old man over lunch when we received news of his passing. The cause of death was not a heart issue but a brain hemorrhage from an unrelated fall. When his daughter came to us for compensation, her unreasonable and harsh demeanor left our colleagues in the observation room both heartbroken and speechless. Fortunately, there was video evidence, so the hospital avoided further trouble. I later learned the whole story from Michael.
Grandpa was under primary care, and when he first arrived at the observation room, it was emphasized that he needed 24-hour supervision, even for bathroom trips. Grandpa arrived at the observation room at 21:40. Around 1:30 a.m., he got up on his own, stood facing the door, waved as if greeting someone, and then tripped himself, falling with his buttocks hitting the ground first, so he wasn't seriously hurt. The family member was sleeping soundly nearby, and it was our colleague on rounds who found Grandpa on the floor. Grandpa was tough, lying there for half an hour without making a sound. Perhaps he had endured so much hardship in his youth that this little pain didn't bother him, or maybe he was waiting for the end. After all, the surveillance showed that Grandpa deliberately tripped himself.
Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." But strangely, Grandpa's second fall was in the same place and position as the first, with his daughter still sleeping soundly nearby. He even had a smile on his face when he passed, as if he had fulfilled a wish. Elderly people usually sleep lightly, and the sound of Grandpa's falls was not small. Why did his 65-year-old daughter sleep so soundly?
You wouldn't believe how unreasonable she was when demanding compensation from our director. Luckily, we found Grandpa's letter under his pillow, and the surveillance showed our colleague making timely rounds, otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to explain ourselves.
I nodded in agreement. Indeed, the human heart and the sun are things you can never look at directly. In calm times, everyone appears polite and kind, but when their interests are at stake, their true nature is revealed. Reality is always more revealing than a magic mirror.
Do you know what was in his letter?
I shook my head, not wanting to hear more. I knew this man's temperament too well. Sure enough, he didn't give me time to cover my ears.
He said he had been looking for his old squad leader in Bright Sword for the past 2 years. That day, he suddenly found him, and he got excited. Later, he kept looking at the door because his squad leader was waiting for him there.
There are so many actors in Bright Sword, how could he find him? Besides, those actors aren't old enough to be his squad leader.
Maybe it was a scene, a line, or a moment that reminded him of his squad leader. After all, he watched it more than 10 times.
I gave up. A chill ran down my spine. Michael, let's sleep together tonight. It's been a while since we had a good chat. This man with a cleanliness obsession instantly changed his expression. Okay, I won this round.
You're such a coward, not manly at all.
Michael always mocked me for being afraid of strange things. He didn't know I had experienced something terrifying when I was a kid. My grandpa Joe was a pig dealer. One day, he went to collect pigs with his partner, Henry. Later, we received terrible news.
Are you sure? There must be a mistake. My brother is still young.
Sadly, it's true. He had some drinks after selling the pigs and fell off the truck on his way back.
Grandpa Joe died young, carrying a heavy grudge. My other grandpa, his brother, hired a Taoist priest for a ritual before the burial.
I dream of Joe every night. He says he was murdered by Henry, who hit him after he fell.
We only handle the rituals. We don't get involved in personal dispute.
Grandpa was skeptical at first, but the dreams continued. He told the priest, who warned him.
The deceased has a strong grudge. A misfortune will befall your family within 3 months if you don't resolve this.
On the day of the burial, strange things happened. The priest performed rituals, and a rooster kept turning its head towards the house.
The grudge is strong. I suppressed it with my powers, but your family will face another loss soon.
We didn't believe it until Grandpa broke his leg after Grandma killed a moth, which was believed to be Joe's spirit visiting. Grandpa sought help from another spiritual expert, Mrs. Chen, who agreed to help.
Prepare a close relative for the ritual tonight.
I'm his brother. Can I do it?
That will work.
Mrs. Chen performed the ritual, and Grandpa Joe's spirit spoke through her.
Brother, avenge me. Henry is going to run away.
How can I be sure it's you?
Remember when you fell into the pit at 15? Mom told us not to speak of it.
Grandpa's face turned red. He realized it was truly Joe's spirit.
What happened? Why did you haunt us?
I tried to warn you, but you didn't believe me. Henry is escaping with my money. Please avenge me.
Time's up. Remember to avenge me.
Mrs. Chen woke up and warned Grandpa.
Never doubt the spirits during a ritual. It could have been dangerous.
After Mrs. Chen left, Grandpa gathered the men and went to Henry's house. Henry had fled. We took his belongings and gave them to Grandma Mary. Grandpa Joe's spirit finally rested, but 76 days later, Great-Grandma passed away. Only then did we recall the Taoist priest's warning. Years later, I moved to the city, but the memories of those events haunted me. In the hospital, everyone mocked me for being afraid of the dead. They didn't understand my fear.
How do you manage to stay composed and not cry with the families during moments of life and death?
I guess she must think I'm a cold-hearted man. But we all start from being emotional, just like everyone else. During my internship, my first assignment was in the cardiothoracic surgery ward. I remember it vividly. We were touring the ward when I noticed an old man breathing strangely. He would take deep breaths and sigh loudly, which was unsettling in the quiet ward. I asked my mentor, Mr. Smith, why is the man in bed 47 always sighing? Shouldn't he be focusing on recovery after the surgery? Mr. Smith gave me a look but didn't respond until we returned to the teaching room.
The man in bed 47 has esophageal cancer that has spread to his lungs. The surgery didn't go well.
One of my classmates asked, if the surgery wasn't effective, why was it done?
People often hold on to hope, thinking they won't be the unlucky ones. Surgery was their last desperate gamble.
We didn't fully grasp the depth of his words. We were more focused on the patient. The next day, we learned that the man in bed 47, David, had passed away early in the morning despite efforts to save him. The teachers were calm, as if they had expected it. We felt the weight of the family's grief and the somber atmosphere. I tried to console the grandmother, but my own voice betrayed me. I wasn't just emotional, I was on the verge of tears. Seeing my classmates with red eyes made me feel less awkward. I, a 6-foot man, cried while comforting a patient's family during my second day of internship. Since then, I avoided the cardiothoracic ward, afraid of hearing stories about myself.
We're just doing our duty. The living must carry on. Please accept our condolences.
Why could they be so calm while doing good deeds and facing death? 7 years later, I became just like them, calm and composed. I once asked Mr. Smith about it.
There's no true empathy, only sympathy. Channel your concern into action. Crying doesn't solve problems, it only spreads negativity. Think about the other patients about to undergo surgery.
His words left me speechless but gave me a glimmer of understanding. The sound of knocking on the table brought me back to reality. Michael was leaning against the nurse's station, dark circles under his eyes.
Stop chatting. After the night shift, I'll make you some chicken soup.
Add more codenopsis, I love that.
No, you only deserve some spiritual chicken soup.
I looked at Emma's confused expression and saw a reflection of myself during my internship year.
It's okay, little one. There will come a day when you understand, but I hope you can stay pure and kind-hearted for a little longer, just a little longer.
Narrator, tone, sad because, after spending too much time in this human world of the hospital, seeing too much, you will slowly become the next Mr. Smith, the next me.